we had our Feast of Seven Fishes dinner on the day after Christmas, which was, some of the kids were commenting they thought it might be the best one we've ever had, an unbelievable menu. And other than one fish that didn't quite work out, we had a full corvina on the grill, and we had asked for, they're fish. They're not exact weights. It's not like go and say, hey, I'd like a pound of salami. You say, I'm looking for a fish somewhere around 8 pounds. And the fish they gave us was this corvina, but it turned out to be 15 pounds. And so the grill timing didn't quite work with it. And by the time it got off the grill, the other 6 had been enjoyed already. And
Welcome back to Work Seats in the House. Michael Russo and Anthony LaPanta coming to you from Southern California. And Anthony, normally the weather would be spectacular out here and we'd be bragging about it. It hasn't been great, but compared to what we hear everybody's had back home, they probably don't want to hear us whine about 60 degrees and drizzly.
Yeah, that's true.
I think they'd take that in a second.
They would, for sure, from what I've heard. And we got out just in time because it was so mild around the holiday season. And then it was right after we left, apparently got dumped with some wet snow. But yeah, I don't ever remember being out here at a time where it was this rainy for this long. And we had one good day, New Year's Day, the sun came out and it was beautiful. And hopefully we steal one more here before we leave Southern California for Seattle on this marathon trip.
Yeah, which we know is always rainy. January 13th is our next live show. That's 7 p.m. at Splitrocks. January 26th at Elsie's. That is also at 7 p.m. Again, the 13th at Splitrocks, 26th at Elsie's. Those will be the last 2 shows for a while with both Anthony and I. Maybe Anthony will do a live show in February without me. I'll be at the Olympics. We will still be doing podcasts throughout February as well. And Anthony, man, the holiday season was fun, I think, for both of us. But I know you did something really unique that we talked about on the last show, the murder mystery down in your speakeasy, their basement that you turned into a speakeasy. I saw the pictures online where you guys were all dressed to the nines as well. Tell everybody about it.
Yeah, it was fun. It's hard to believe we haven't had a show since the holiday season now. But we had a great chance to get together with family over the holidays. It worked out really well this year. We had our homemade pizza night on New Year's Eve or Christmas Eve, like we always do with my brother and sister and my mom. And then on Christmas night, we decided to do something different. And it was my daughter Gianni's idea. We did a how to host a murder mystery party, which I hadn't done one of those for maybe, I'm going to say 30, 35 years. And it was set in Prohibition era. So we turned the basement into a speakeasy, built a little bar. Gianni did some decorating down there. We made a playlist of like 1920s Prohibition music and mixed up some Prohibition era cocktails like Bee's Knees, Last Word, and French 75 sidecars. It was interesting reading a little bit about how and why those cocktails emerged during that era. And then everybody really got into it and ordered pieces of costumes online and found them somewhere. And so, yeah, really everybody was a couple rival gangs. That was the gist of the story. And we just really had some fun with it and something different. And then we had our Feast of Seven Fishes dinner on the day after Christmas, which was, some of the kids were commenting they thought it might be the best one we've ever had, an unbelievable menu. And other than one fish that didn't quite work out, we had a full corvina on the grill, and we had asked for, they're fish. They're not exact weights. It's not like you go and say, hey, I'd like a pound of salami. You say, I'm looking for a fish somewhere around 8 pounds. And the fish they gave us was this corvina, but it turned out to be 15 pounds. And so the grill timing didn't quite work with it. And by the time it got off the grill, the other 6 had been enjoyed already. And so that one kind of missed, but the rest of them were terrific. Had a halibut that was great, some sea bass that was great, walleye sliders that were terrific, on some sourdough buns that Gianni had made. So we really just had an unbelievable holiday season. I'm so thankful for the time we got with all of our kids together and their significant others. So our family really is 10 now for all these outings, which is really fun to see. They're all in great places. And as you know, when my whole family gets together, the volume level, the energy level in our house hits a new high just about every time. And this was no different. It was some long days, late nights, but it was so much fun. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, it's funny. I was flying out to Vegas and I get a text message from your son Vinny saying, "How's first class treating you?" And I'm like, "Are you on this plane?" And he's like, "Yeah." And both our flights were canceled and we got on a later flight. I was thinking to myself, who walks by somebody on a plane and doesn't even just be like, or "Hey Russo," or tap you on the shoulder or something. He just walks by me with his girlfriend and then texts me from the back of the plane. So
Well, it
very,
sounds like
very Anthony LaPanta like.
it does sound a little LaPanta like. My guess is that when he walked by, you were probably on your phone and he didn't want to bother you, but he probably also found it funny, thinking he could walk right past you with you not noticing.
Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah, he didn't want to disturb me scrolling Twitter. Anthony, one quick question about the Feast of Seven Fishes, because just listening to you tell the story, I'm curious how you make sure, because you don't have like an industrial kitchen and 25 cooks. So how do you make sure that everything is cooked to completion at the exact same time?
Well, it's the one day that I will jot some things down when I cook, because I don't we don't cook with recipes, but I do make a kind of a timing sheet that, okay, we're going to have this stuff on the table at 7 o'clock. And so that means this has to go into the oven at 6:50. This has to go in at 6:48. So we spend probably 2 or 3 hours in the kitchen ahead of time doing all the chopping, making all the sauces, all the marinades, the rubs, all that kind of stuff. So that when it comes time to hit that timing sheet, because most of the fish only takes, maybe 10, 12 minutes max once you start it, and some even less. We had calamari this year. We had and yes, you're right about the kitchen. So you have to figure out, we have to use the broiler for at least one fish. We have to use the grill for at least one fish, because we just don't have 7 different places that we can cook fish simultaneously. And the girls are great about helping to chop. We usually put AJ in charge of the fish on the grill and just let him go. But all the rest of them are, all right, the halibut's ready. This is the sauce. So when it goes under the broiler, when it comes out, we'll kind of have all hands on deck for that chaos of about 6 to 8 minutes where everything is being cooked simultaneously, because you want it all to hit the table hot and all to hit the table not overcooked. So it is a challenge, but it's a challenge I love. It's fun. And this year there were a few that I think will carry over for sure. We made a tuna tataki that was really well received with kind of a citrus soy sauce over the top of it. And we usually do some kind of slider, just because Gianni makes these sourdough buns that are great. And it's just kind of an easy way to mix it up and do something different. So it's a challenge, but it's part of the fun of the night, is that, we don't let Margot in the kitchen during that chaos time, because she sometimes will come in to take some pictures, but at that point we don't need anybody second guessing us. We just need everybody's got a job, everybody knows what's coming, and now some of them have helped enough with things where you can just say to them, okay, we need to make a marinade for this, and I'm thinking it's going to be citrus and cocoa aminos or something, and I'll just put one of them in charge of it, and they'll do the chopping and the tasting, and it's not quite right. I feel like it needs more salt, or it needs more of some kind of basil or parsley or herb of some kind, or this one needs a little more kick. So, I'm going to try some cayenne or whatever. So they kind of take some of it on themselves, which is fun to see now that they've made enough of this kind of stuff to have an opinion.
Yeah, interesting. Let's talk about the Wild, Anthony. They are 22, 4, and 5 since November 1, and still somehow, with that incredible record, have lost a couple points on the Avs in the standings because the Avs rallied back from 2-goal down in Carolina yesterday at a regulation win. They are 10, 1, and 3 in their last 17 games, 8, 1, and 3 since the Quinn Hughes trade, 7, 1, and 3 with Quinn in the lineup. And the funny thing about this trip is it almost feels like a flashback to 2014, Anthony, the game 7, where
Yeah.
the Tarasenko goal in San Jose really reminded me of the Nino goal. And then last night, the Wild here in Los Angeles, game 1 of a 2-game series where the rubber match will be on the Monday night. The Wild rallied back from a goal deficit 4 different times. The only thing they didn't do, like 2014, was win in overtime. They wound up losing in the shootout. It's the 3rd shootout loss of the season, 2nd in the last 3 games. So kind of, toss away 3 points in the standings there. But they continue to find ways to get points. And, when you have a 7-game road trip and you start off with points on the first 5 games, it's not too shabby, even though, you want to win everyone.
Yeah, that's for sure true. And I think if you had said, hey, 5 games into the trip, you're going to have 8 out of 10 points, anybody would take it. I mean, which is where the Wild are right now. And I thought the game, we talked about that comparison to game 7 during the broadcast last night, that's the only other time I can ever remember the Wild erasing 4 deficits in a game. And the coincidence that, Kemper was a part of that game for a while. And,
oh, yeah.
And it was, that night it was Spurgeon that came through with the game tying goal. I thought it just felt like one of those games where it was going to be one of the defensemen that made a play. It turned out to be Boldy, but it was, I think, a really.
Although Faber kind of made the play.
He did. It was very similar,
Yeah.
actually. And I think that's what we talked about on the show, on the broadcast, was that goal was really similar to the Spurgeon goal. And but I think there are times where it's a good point and a time when it's a disappointing point when you lose in overtime or lose in the extra session. And I thought both of them on this trip, because San Jose, they were down by 2 in the 3rd period, and now LA down 4 different times in the game on the second of back-to-backs, and yet found a way to emerge with a point. Those are big points and might turn out to be huge points at the end of the season when you look at how tight this Central is.
And, it's usually Sunday night games where teams will move a time up to 5 or 6. Like, clearly the LA Kings had a 6 p.m. Saturday night game because the Wild played the night before at 7:30. It feels like the Ducks and the Kings, and there's certain teams that just always seem to be benefactors of back-to-backs. And, anytime teams come out here to Anaheim or LA, they usually play a back-to-back. And clearly the Kings try to orchestrate that in their favor by having a 6 p.m. game. The puck drops 20 hours after the game ended in Anaheim, and the Wild had their legs. I mean, the one thing about the theme of this trip has been arrive on time, Anthony, and the Wild, you obviously you'd love them to be 5-0, but in all 5 games, I thought they started really well. Even the game, in San Jose, which I know at times were a disappointment, especially in the second period, I thought they started really well that game. I thought they started really well in Vegas. They certainly started well in Winnipeg. And so, that's a good sign too, is that they're definitely, playing more versions of complete hockey that we've seen. And usually at this time of year in the dog days, you and I have talked about it, you get to that point where you maybe take your foot off the gas, but the Wild, in a league where the top 3 teams seem to be running away, in the standings, they continue to play really consistent hockey.
Yeah, and I think a couple of those teams that they've beaten on this trip and I know this Winnipeg club is really struggling right now. In fact, I'm not sure they've dug themselves a hole that I'm not sure they'll be able to escape. But they are still a team that has been tough on the Wild over the years. And to go in there and start the trip on a very tough day where you're traveling early in the morning and playing that night, and the Wild found a way to win that game. And then the trip to Vegas, which, think about that day for the Wild players, to leaving the Twin Cities. And by the time they got to their hotels in Vegas, it was 22 hours, I think, after they had left the Twin Cities. So a real long day. And yes, they had an off day in Vegas, but it was not a practice day or anything. It was just a recovery day. And then to come out and really put a whooping on the team that knocked them out of the playoffs last year in the Vegas Golden Knights. And it wasn't a fluke. It was, I kind of felt like both of those games sent messages like this is different now. This is a different time. And I think they cemented the Wild just as a start to this trip that, hey, none of this is fool's gold. None of this is smoke and mirrors. This is a team that is legit ready to be talked about in the same sentence as Colorado and Dallas as the teams to beat in the Western Conference.
Absolutely. And to your point, Winnipeg, 34 points last in the NHL. This is a team that won the President's Trophy a year ago. Just continue to lose games. They've won one of their last 10. And this is, with Hellebuck back in the lineup, but it just seems like they've lost a lot of scoring, a lot of speed. They're bottom six, not very good. And just really, really strange times there. And then it's hard, as we've talked about many, many times over the years, Anthony, to fix that in season, because even though they've figured out ways to get Hellebuck and Scheifele, and Connor and those guys to re-sign there long term, most teams, most players with trade protection have Winnipeg on their no trade list. That's just a fact. So it's hard to remedy situations in season, and you almost have to do it out of season. So Winnipeg certainly feels like they're in a lot of trouble. Colorado, they just continue to roll. It's crazy. I almost feel like not enough people are talking about this season they're on. I mean, I know they have 7 overtime losses, but 2 regulation losses in 40 games. They're almost at 70 points. It truly, they have a plus 73 goal differential. They have not lost in regulation at home. It's truly remarkable what they're doing.
It is, and most of those overtime losses came early in the year. If you remember, I think they started with like 7 wins. They were like 7-1-5 or something like that at the beginning of the year. Because I remember looking one time saying, let's not crown these guys yet. They've played 13 games. They've won 7 and lost 6. It just so happens that 5 of the 6 losses were in overtime. But since that time, they just never lose. And it is unbelievable. We were talking about this a little bit too, that, we're wondering, hey, the Central is 3 and then there's a big split. And will this finally be the year where the Pacific Division puts 5 teams in the playoffs? It's never happened. There have been 10 seasons under this playoff format, and the Pacific is the only division that's never sent 5 to the postseason. The Atlantic's only done it once last year, but the Pacific has never done it, whereas the Central's done it 6 times. But then you look, and I mean, number one, the Wild would be a dozen points clear of the pack if they were in the Pacific. And you mentioned the Colorado goal differential. There is not one team in the Pacific that has a positive goal differential. Not one. Every single team has a negative goal differential for the season. And I think the only team that has more wins than losses, if you take away the OTL bonus points, is the Ducks. I think they have, and they're 1 game over, 21 wins and 20 losses on the year. And so, yes, maybe they put 5 teams in just because they're all the same level of mediocre, but I don't know if that's a given anymore. Right now, in the way Nashville's playing, I think they might legitimately be better than the 4th, 5th, 6th teams in the Pacific Division.
It is truly, truly bonkers. All right, let's do this. Let's take a break. When we come back, we've waited long enough to talk about Quinn Hughes and the transformation that he has brought to this team, playing just tremendous hockey. And the funny thing is, when you talk to him, he feels like he still hasn't hit his stride, which is got to be that's got to almost tickle Wild fans to think that a guy playing as well as he has feels like he still hasn't really become the Quinn Hughes that he's accustomed to being. We'll be right back on Worst Seats in the House.
I'm excited to start 2026, but we've already had this weather that's just all over the map this winter. Bitter cold blizzards, but we love it. That's why we live in Minnesota. But with this Minnesota winter we're having, I'm hoping you are not relying on that, not so reliable furnace. Here's the fix for 2026 if you are. If your furnace just needs a little New Year's motivation, Aquarius Home Services has you covered with $98 off any furnace repair. And if it's time to finally say goodbye and good riddance to that old unreliable furnace, well, now's the perfect time to upgrade. From Aquarius right now, Enjoy no payments and no interest for 6 months on a new high-efficiency whole home heating and cooling system. That's right. Enjoy today and don't pay until the summer. You've heard it from me for years about Aquarius Home Services. Trust me, I wouldn't recommend them if I didn't absolutely believe in them and love them. They have helped me be worry-free through all seasons and all situations. They do it all: heating and cooling, electrical, plumbing, drains, and of course, water treatment with their unmatched Connecticut water treatment system, which I've had for years in my home. Whether it's a furnace repair or full upgrade, Aquarius is the place I recommend. Schedule your appointment today at AquariusHomeservices.com. Financing based on credit approval. Aquarius, earning the right to be recommended and keeping your warm cozy and warm all winter long. And don't forget to mention Russo sent you.
Back here, Worst Seats in the House, Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta, coming to you from Southern California. Our next live show is January 13th at Splitrocks and January 26th at LC's, both games, 7 p.m. Anthony, any other fun stuff you've been doing on the road?
Well, I mean, it's been an unbelievable trip in terms of where we go and what we've done. I mean, we stay in an unbelievable place in Vegas at the Waldorf that's terrific, and had the off day there, which I like. We had a great Italian dinner that night at Carbone in the Aria, which was terrific. And then because of the multiple days off on this part of the trip, we stayed out in a terrific place out near the water, just south of Newport Beach in Anaheim for a couple nights, and now we're staying in Santa Monica. And it just doesn't happen very often where you're in the same place for multiple nights, for 4 nights, like we are right now in Santa Monica because of these 2 games with LA. I love the Santa Monica area, and when we've stayed in LA the last few years, I've just Ubered out here and just picked a street corner and been dropped off and just kind of wandered the area and found some great spots. I went and visited a couple of them last night after the game, a couple little spots that I love for an after dinner cocktail, and met a guy there that was a big hockey fan from the East Coast that now lives out here, but he was actually a Flyers fan, we chatted hockey at the bar, and he gave me a great Italian spot to try tonight. I checked it out online. Looks cool. So we're going to go give that a shot tonight. So it's been a terrific trip so far. And for as long as it is, anytime you get to break it up with some of this kind of stuff, it's been great.
We've seen Quinn Hughes, since he's been here, set a franchise record for most assists by a defenseman. Gets 4 assists the other night. Had a 3-assist game. We see him completing stretch passes, turning on dimes inside the blue line within a couple inches. Even the play that he turned the puck over for the 3-on-1 the other day and lost his stick. I mean, you saw exactly what he was doing. It was almost going to work out. Anaheim played it terrifically. This team continues to score 4 or 5 goals a game with him. He's just seemingly transformed everything from offensively to their ability to get out of their own end to, as you've pointed out many times on the broadcast and last night with John Hines in the post game, it's not just him, it's what he's done for the Blue Liners. They have the most points amongst Blue Liners since he's been here in the 11 games. It really has been cool to watch, Anthony.
Yeah, and I asked John about it in the postgame last night. We had talked about it a couple days ago, too, that they lead the NHL in defensive points since he's been here. They were 29th before he arrived. And yes, he's a part of it, but the other defensemen have also been able to elevate their games. And I think he's no small part of that. Brock Faber now is playing with him, which is makes Brock a more dynamic offensive player. It allows Brodin and Spurgeon to play together, and neither of them are guys that are going to rival for the defensive scoring leaders, but they both have offensive skills in their game. And now when they're playing together, it's allowed them to bring more from their game. And Jake Middleton even got in the act the other night. So it's been significant. And I don't think it's a small part of the depth scoring that the Wild have suddenly gotten either. That, they for so long were riding Kaprizov and Boldy. But now if you look just even over the last 4 games, those guys prior to that had scored almost 40% of the team's goals. And now in the last 4 games, they have 3 out of, I think, 18 now that the team has scored in the last 4, and they only have 3 of them. So, you go from 40% to 16%. That's a significant difference.
It really is. And I think that he's just going to continue to get better. what I have just loved is his whole overall attitude too. Like he's like when you talk to him, like so after the game that he had 4 assists the other day, I don't know if you noticed because you're usually aloof on everything. That I wasn't in the post game with John Hines. It was because I was sitting down with Quinn for 10 or so minutes just for a bunch of stories that I have coming up, and he's so humble about how that game against Anaheim, he finally just, and maybe with a little advice from his mom to start taking shots, he decided that he was being a little too passive, that he was just trying to fit in and not upset the apple cart because he came to a team in his mind that's the second or third or fourth best team in the league, and he just wanted to fit in. And then at some point, you just got to realize, you know what, I'm Quinn Hughes. They got me for a reason. They gave up a ton, and I'm going to start to perform like that. And you could see it that whole night, Anthony. And the other thing about him, and I don't know if either of us have seen a defenseman like him in the NHL that always wants to have the puck on his stick. Mike Kelly, who does some work for you guys on FanDuel, has put out stats before that he by far in the league, even including forwards, has the puck on his stick more than anybody in the NHL for years and years and years. And you see why. He controls the pace of play in games. He decides how fast they're going to go, how they're getting out of their own zone. It's really interesting to watch. In a lot of ways, he's like a quarterback.
Yeah, when we had talked to Mike Kelly, this was before the Wild had acquired him. And we were talking, in fact, we got on the subject because we were talking about some turnover statistics. And I had made my pitch to him that I've made to league stats guys, and we've talked about it on the show, that I wish they just kept a stat of turnover. That differentiating between a giveaway or a takeaway to me is silly. You had the puck, now the other team does. That's a turnover.
I agree.
And the NBA does it that way. You turn it over. Some of them are steals, some of them are not, but they're all turnovers.
Yep.
And I wish the NHL counted them that way. And so when I had talked to him about it, he said they tracked the number of times a player touches the puck, and they had some equivalent. It was close to what I was talking about, but he had thrown out some stats, and it was the number of puck touches in a game. And I don't remember exactly what the numbers were, but Hughes was like 30% higher than any other player. Let's say he had 85 touches or 105 touches or something. Like the next highest was in the 60s. And when it came to minutes with the puck on his stick, he was almost double the next highest player for how much time the puck was on his stick. And now that we've watched him, it is amazing how long he holds onto the puck, but yet never seems to. I mean, the other night, I guess he did, where he broke his stick near the blue line and led to a 3.5 on a half breakaway, where he was a guy coming back with no stick, and the Wild ended up taking a penalty on the play, I think, but didn't give up a goal. But other than that, I don't remember a time where he'll spin away from somebody, and just when you think, this is about to be a turnover just inside the offensive blue line, he somehow hangs onto the puck long enough to just get it safely down into the corner or onto a teammate's stick. It's really amazing how efficiently he holds onto the puck.
It really is. And he could turn on a dime. And, I was talking to him a little bit, and I was talking about a lot of stuff. So I won't give away a lot of the stories that I'm going to be working on. But obviously the Wild played the Hughes brothers on January 12th too, which there's something really cool about that day and the Hughes family that I'll explain in the story. But he was telling me like why he goes over the bench the way that he does, or even, the one thing that he's told me before, the weight, if you notice, he actually falls a lot on the ice. And one reason is he takes such sharp turns that the plastic of below his skates will actually hit the ice. And that's why he falls. And actually in his debut against the Boston Bruins, Anthony, he would come to the bench, and the equipment trainers are basically like, "Are we doing something wrong with your skates?" And he goes, No, this is not your fault. This is just how, you're going to see I fall a lot. I mean, so it's kind of interesting just the way that he plays. Just a really fascinating guy, a fascinating family. And it's just going to be really, really neat that for only the second time in their careers, we're going to get to see, knock on wood, barring injuries, Quinn face Jack and Luke on January 12th when the Devils come to town. His whole family will be here and all that stuff. Anthony, really cool day down at Honda Center the other day when we found out the number of Olympians that the Wild will have. Jesper Wallstedt, the only surprise pick. Linus Ullmark is, not had a great year. He's right now on a leave of absence from the Ottawa Senators, so we wish him well. But Wallstedt takes Linus Ullmark's spot. Jacob Markstrom's going, and Philip Gustafsson. So the Wild will have two Swedes there in their own net. Then obviously joined by Eriksson Ek, Brodin, and Gustafsson, as I mentioned. They'll have three Americans in Hughes, Faber, and Boldy. Obviously, John Hines is going. Obviously, Bill Guerin, Chris Kelleher, John Worley, Travis Green, they're two athletic therapists, and Dr. Boyd, the team doctor, the Wild's orthopedic surgeon. Nico Sturm will be there with Germany, and then we're going to find out probably early this week, I think on Tuesday, on which two checks, if the Wild get two checks from David Spacek and David Juracek. And then obviously Sam Halavai will be starting for Slovakia net. So the Wild could have up to 11 Olympians. But Wallstedt, the biggest news of the day. The second biggest news, unfortunately, is Marcus Johansson not getting selected.
Yeah, the both of them surprised me, actually. Wallstedt, we had talked about it. We both thought his play had warranted that he was one of the best three Swedish goaltenders, but I just thought probably this point in his career, they were looking, saying his time will come and it's not now. Let's go with the vets. And instead they went with Wallstedt. Well-deserved and really cool to have he and Gus go together. But Johansson to me was a guy that was worthy of selection, especially when you look at some of the players that were taken ahead of him. And, we've talked about our speculation on the U.S. team and everything, and I haven't broken down their roster for what types of players they all might be. So I don't want to. They've clearly studied this a lot deeper than I have, but on the surface, there are a couple players that I would take Marcus Johansson over those players in a blink of an eye. And he's shown this year the ability to play up and down the lineup for you, that he could be in a third or fourth line role. He could be on a checking line role, but could also slide into the top six if you need him. And he's been a part of whatever the best line for the Wild has been just about all season long, with a little exception of the time that Eriksson Ek was playing with Boldy and Kaprizov, where clearly they were the team's best line. But if you look early in the year when he was playing on a third line, that was Minnesota's best line. And he moved up on the top line with Kaprizov for a while, and that was the best line. And then as soon as he was put together with Boldy and Eriksson Ek, ever since, that's been Minnesota's best line. And that's been the line that Minnesota uses against the best, and it's been the line that has drawn the checking line of the opponent most nights. And he's been
look, Anthony, you don't have to tell me. I've been telling you for years how imperative Marcus Johansson is.
How important he is. But and he's had good success with Team Sweden in the past. I just really thought, it surprised me. I thought for sure he would make the team. And I know he was told that he's the next guy on the list if somebody winds up not being able to go. So there's still a chance he ends up on the team. But I think it was disappointing to see him get left off.
Yeah, and I talked to him after practice in Anaheim, Anthony, and he was very sad about it. And he had, the other thing I give him credit, man, does he have a good poker face? Because I asked him after the game in Vegas, his 4-point game, how much he just wanted to strive for this team. He'd actually found out the day before that he didn't make it, and yet he didn't feel like it was his place to divulge that to the media. And so, and I remember listening to him, especially in hindsight after that game, and it should have been pretty obvious to me that he probably already knew, because you could just tell he really didn't want to talk about it. I just thought that he didn't want to talk about it publicly and put pressure on Sweden, but it was actually because he had already known. But I really felt bad for him listening to him, because you could just see how much it hurt him. He was in the 2014 Olympics. He has said yes to the last two World Championships, helped them, and he performed masterfully for them. And look, these are human beings too. So when he looks at the roster, he's got to be like, I don't want to put words in Marcus's mouth, but he's got to be like, Pontus Holmberg, really? Like, Pontus is a good player, but the guy cannot score. And even like, and I love the guy. I've gotten to sit down with him a couple times, but Alex Wenberg, like even William Eklund on the same team's got to be like, wait a minute, what? like I'm better than Alex Wenberg at this stage in my career, and Eklund got snubbed. So it's funny. I never even, when I was doing my Team Sweden roster projections, Anthony, I always thought it was going to be Eklund versus Johansson. I never even considered Pontus Holmberg. So then when I saw that Eklund didn't make it, and Holmberg did, and Wenberg did, and Raquel did, and not JoJo. It just really surprised me. And I just think the way that Johansson's playing, he's such a, chameleon, as you just pointed out, where you can put him first line to fourth line, even center to left wing or right wing. Who's better at transporting the puck up ice on a power play? It really was disappointing. The other thing that was funny that day at the Honda Center is, the goalies for the Wild don't speak when they're starting. And I just was completely flaked out. So when Wally made the Olympic team and I knew he was backing up, I was so excited to do that story. But then I wanted to get Gus on it. So I just went right up to Gus as he was walking to the bus and interviewed him. And then all of a sudden afterwards, it dawned on me, like, I was not supposed to be interviewing Gus. And I was so nervous that night that I pulled like a Nicholas Baxter. And do you remember that one time I made eye contact with him in Denver during his turtle walk, and he gave up 7 by the end of this? I was like, did I just screw up Philip Gustafson in a building that he never loses in? Did I just mess this guy's mojo up? But luckily it didn't happen.
Yeah, it was, well, there's a lot there. I mean, I don't really, I remember you telling me stories about the disruption of Backstrom. Doesn't surprise me that you'd just be oblivious to the goaltender, on game day and just, randomly start to talk to him. But to put a final wrap on Pontus Holmberg had never even crossed my mind as being an Olympian. And Raquel was a guy that I thought I could see them taking him because he's a veteran. But I thought Eklund was a no-brainer. Wenberg was another guy. Like, if I was jotting down names, his would have never crossed my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. When we come back, Anthony, I want to talk to you about the men's Olympic team for the U.S., and just some of the snubs, because obviously, Bill Guerin and his team have been getting dragged through the mud for the Jason Robertson snub. But I want to talk to you about the team overall, because I think that we're letting it overshadow that this is a really good hockey team that they've put together. So I want to talk to you about that. And then we got some Twitter questions as well. We'll be right back on Worst Seats in the House.
Deer hunting season is here, and it's time to own your odds with OnX Hunt, the GPS hunting app trusted by millions of hunters. With the Hunt app, you'll have access to nationwide public and private land ownership information, waypoints, tracks, and much more, all at your fingertips. Go to onxmaps.com/hunt. That's onxmaps.com/hunt to sign up today.
Back here, Word Seats in the House. Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta, final segment of the show before Anthony hits the beach and preps for game 2 of the LA Kings game. And the little meeting, it's kind of cool. I mean, we saw this obviously during the pandemic where you had little mini series. I feel like, I haven't confirmed this, maybe I'll do it when you're talking, but I feel like my first year covering the Wild in 05-06, the Wild played consecutive games in Edmonton after the Christmas break. But this is kind of neat that, the Wild feel like they had unfinished business by losing in the shootout on Saturday night, and they'll get a chance to get 2 points against the Kings on Monday night.
Yeah, I mean, other than when you go back to that COVID year where you played everybody twice, and other than that, these are. It's kind of cool to mix it in every once in a while. I remember after the COVID year, people talking about that. Oh, it'd be fun to do this all the time, and I just thought, well, you have to remember that the schedule just doesn't work to do this all the time, because there's only so many teams that you play twice in a city, but it is kind of fun, and it's fun to have a chance to bounce back against a club that just beat you and play them again. So I think we'll see there was a little animosity building up as the game wore on last night, and I think that we'll see some of that carry over. That'll be fun.
Doubt. By the way, I am actually right on this. So the Wild played December 26th and 27th. So by the way, that was back when they didn't have where games didn't start the 27th. It started the day after Christmas, because I remember flying to Edmonton on Christmas night, and the Wild won 4-1 and 4-2. And what was really interesting, it was consecutive games in Edmonton, 2 days apart. And what was really interesting about that I remember back at 05-06, and people could correct me if I'm wrong on this, is that was my first year covering the Wild. And apparently the Oilers had the Wild's number up until those 2 games, where the Wild essentially lost to the Oilers all the time. And from that point on, if you look at the record, for 20 years, the Wild have just dominated the Oilers. It's like they've had their number. It just hasn't ended. So it's, I don't know.
How about their numbers against the Ducks? 20 out of 21 now?
Crazy.
I mean, that's just unbelievable.
Yeah, so I was emailing back and forth with NHL stats the other night, and you probably know this, Anthony, because you're a stats maven. But the last team that did this, that won 20 of 21 games, was the Boston Bruins against the Phoenix Coyotes from 2011 to 2013-14, I believe. But the other thing that's crazy is the last team to win in an opposing building 10 games in regulation is also the Boston Bruins at the Minnesota North Stars from like 82 to 87. So since 1987, there has not been a team other than the Minnesota Wild to win 10 straight regulation games on the road against a single opponent. So, I mean, it's funny because I was really impressed with that crowd the other night. But if you knew these numbers, would you even go to an Anaheim game if you were a Ducks fan against the Wild? I probably would.
Yeah, I'd probably just stay home for those nights. But it's funny that we had talked about the Ducks, and I know we've brought up this dinner conversation before, where when they were in St. Paul, like in early November, and I remember sitting at the table, and we've got our good friend John Stroh, who's the coordinating producer of for Victory Plus, who has the rights to the Ducks and Stars, and he used to be our producer with the Wild. And we were sitting there talking, and he was asking about the Wild, and I just at that time was like convinced the Wild were a no-brainer playoff team, even though they were 3-6-3, and the Ducks, I said, I just don't see it. I don't see this team as legit. They had started 11-3-1. They were, I thought, smoke and mirrors. And I thought when you get to this point in the year where games get a little heavier, a little more rugged, teams are a little more structured defensively, that they'd get exposed. And they have. Since that time, they had lost coming in. I think they had lost in Colorado maybe earlier on that trip. But they're from their 11-3-1 start to now, they're like the 29th best team in the NHL. And it's just a team that's not there yet. They've got some young stars, but they're not there yet. They don't have the defensive core. They don't have the goaltending. And, if they continue on the trend they've been lately, they're going to end up on the outside looking in without a doubt in the postseason.
Yeah, no, you were definitely right on them. I'm one of those people that was a little bullish on the Ducks and thought they'd be, much, much better, and that they were more for real. I think one big thing that just watching the other night that surprises me is Dostal, because I really think highly of him as a goalie, and I thought the other night he really struggled. And you're right. I mean, they're not the deepest on the blue line. At this stage in his career, even though Trouba's had a good year, he's not the guy. Kreider's really come back down to earth. And some of their young kids, just need to continue to build and get experience. San Jose, though, Anthony, is a team that they have a lot of really good young players. I mean, that 96 or 92? Igor, what is it, Sharinov? How do you pronounce that?
Sharinov.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Chernichov, and obviously Celebrini and Will Smith was hurt that night, but they're really good. Let's talk about the Olympic team real quick, Anthony, and then we'll take some Twitter questions. So the Americans. By the way, my editor pointed out to me the other day that, just so you know, in most your USA stories, because I am our USA writer at The Athletic, at some point in every story you call the Americans the Wild. So you might want to just try to get out of that habit when you're in Milan. So anyway, luckily it's been caught, but at some point, if you're reading one of my United States stories, you might see me refer to the Americans as the Wild. Anyway, so I obviously made up my own lines, but right now I have Brady Tkachuk with Jack Eichel and Matthew Tkachuk. I have Jake Gensel with Austin Matthews and Matt Boldy. I have Kyle Connor with Jack Hughes and Tage Thompson. I have JT Miller with Dylan Larkin and Brock Nelson, but I'm actually more thinking that Clayton Keller is going to get a lot of playing time. And then you have Trocheck there. You got Hughes and McAvoy, Jacob Slavin and Favor, Werenski and Jones, Sanderson and Hanifin, and then the goalies being Hellebuck, Ottinger, and Swayman. The three newbies are Seth Jones, and then obviously up front, Tage Thompson and Clayton Keller. You could also include on the back end Quinn Hughes because he was out. A lot of people, as often that happens with Olympic teams, because great players going to be left off, are really talking mostly about Jason Robertson and Cole Caulfield and Adam Fox being snubbed, and along with others like Alex Tuck and Matty Nyes and players like that. Let's talk about that in a second. But the one thing I wanted to talk to you about is that this is still a really, really good team. I know they're leaving a lot of offense home, and Jason Robertson and Cole Caulfield and Alex DeBrincat and players like that, but the reality is that Tage Thompson, Clayton Keller, and Quinn Hughes right away add offense to a team that needed a little more offense last year. And if you can get Austin Matthews and Jack Hughes and Kyle Connor to score goals in this tournament, unlike they did in the Four Nations where they were goalless, and then you add a Tage and a Keller and a Quinn Hughes, it changes everything. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, yes, for sure. And I have always, as I just said earlier about Team Sweden, is I never really sat down to break down, okay, who's going to be in this role on this team? Who's going to be this guy? Who's going to be the penalty killer? That kind of thing. I'm just looking at the players that, to me, and Billy made it clear, look, we're not picking an all-star team. We're picking a team. And there is a difference. There's no question about it. And to me, Jason Robertson is the one guy that I would have included on this team. I think his game's been better. But I do think we've seen the impact Quinn Hughes can have on creating scoring from other guys. And you do have to remember that he wasn't there in the last tournament. So I think that alone, and Billy made that point when he traded for him. Remember when we had him on, I asked him about the fact that for a long time, the talk has been, and the target has been that got to find a scoring winger. And he said, we think Quinn Hughes can create more scoring for our existing wingers from the blue line. And he's proven that to be true.
100%. So let's just, obviously, I think Billy had to make the decision on Adam Fox. I think they wanted Noah Hannafin there and they wanted Seth Jones there. I clearly think that Mike Sullivan and Chris Drury went to bat for him. But conversely, I think that Mike Sullivan really went back for what he calls went to bat for what he calls, quote, glue guys in Trocheck and Miller. Both of them haven't had greatest years, although Trocheck, when healthy, has produced. Miller has not had a great year. And there have been plenty of, videos out there that really have, isolated him and from a work ethic standpoint or defensive standpoint. But I think Mike Sullivan wanted them and he got his way, and that probably cost Jason Robertson. I don't think a lot of people were beating their drum for Jason. You and I have talked about this often. I know that, and I'm just giving the perspective from I know what your retort's going to be, but I'll say it first, and then you could say exactly what you think. From a scout's perspective, sometimes there's just something about Jason that just doesn't wow you. You go to a game and you don't see him skating overly well. He might not have the greatest shot. He might not go into the corners and battle the way that you would think. There's guys that, but then at the end of the night, he has 2 goals. There are guys like, I remember covering Ray Shepard in Florida, and there was just this perception of him that if he wasn't scoring, he wasn't doing anything. And I just think when it came down to it with Jason Robertson, I think they felt like in the role that they envisioned him on the team, they just had players ahead of him. The Kachuk brothers, Gensel, Boldy, Connor. And I know where some fans, and I think they're right in questioning this, is that Connor was, quote, not good enough to play in the championship game. He was scratched. Trocheck, as good as he is and being a quote unquote glue guy, played 8-9 minutes in the championship game. And yet you're leaving Jason Robertson off. So I think that's where people are really upset about this, especially. Plus the fact up until, Boldy's goal the other day, he was leading All-Americans in scoring. So what's your impression on the fact that he doesn't wow you? Because I think that is what scouts see, but you actually feel that's different this year.
Well, I do think it's different this year. And I've shared your opinion of him earlier in his career. And I remember there was always that comparison with him and Kirill Kaprizov because they were 1-2 in the Rookie of the Year balloting when they were rookies. And I just looked at him and said, there's no comparison. Kaprizov drives a game. Robertson looks like a supplemental player to me that is a guy that needs to play with Rope Hintz on his line to drive the line. And Robertson is just a contributor. But I always viewed him the same way you did, and then all of a sudden at the end of the night, you'd look and he's got 3 points again. And he had back-to-back 40-goal seasons and a 109-point season one year where he also had 63 assists. And it can't always just be that you're benefiting from who you're playing with. But this year, I've seen a difference in his game where he seems like he's creating more. And the guy's on pace for 48 goals and 48 assists at the halfway point of the season. And if you look at to compare him to Connor, I mean, let's say I'd view those two guys as kind of guys that would play a similar role, I would think. And, Connor has done it for longer because he's a few years older. But Robertson has probably produced more than Connor per year over his 4 years than what Connor has done over 8.
Mm-hmm.
I can see why you just look at it and say, well, Connor's done it longer. He was here before. Let's go that route. And it's hard to argue. I mean, Connor's been one of the best American-born goal scorers throughout most of his career. And that's why I always say I'm quick to backpedal off of this, because I haven't sat down to look at when we line up against Team Canada, who's going to check, who's going to play against this line. And, that's where you probably have roles for guys like a Trocheck or like a JT Miller, and you have to build your team that way, not just, who are the best players.
Especially the level that guys like McKinnon and McDavid and McCarr and Crosby are playing at this year, is that you're probably, no matter how good the Americans are, you're probably not going to be able to go end to end for them and have it end well. So you need to check, you need to slow them down. So we'll see if that happens. It is funny because Stars fans, especially, and they have every right to be upset. If Jim Nill was, and look, I know Jim's Canadian, but if Jim Nill was managing the U.S. team and didn't take Boldy or Favor, Wild fans would be screaming bloody murder, also saying he's biased. What I actually find funny about this, and a little hypocritical, if Stars fans think about this logically, is that if Billy was so biased and actually was just thinking about like his hatred of the Stars or his love of the Minnesota Wild, I think you put Jason Robertson on the team any day of the week, because you're going to probably have to face them in the first round. And you don't want this guy, 1, rested, and 2, extra motivated to light him up for 10 goals in the first round series. And yet Billy still didn't think like that. He did it his job and thought about this the way that they were logically, and decided that I'm still not putting Jason Robertson on the team, and it might wind up haunting him in the end. But it is kind of funny that they might have to play this team in the first round, and they are going to have a motivated Jason Robertson to contend with if he's not an injury replacement for somebody.
Yeah. And, there's a lot of guys that we've joked over the years that, when they faced Buffalo and Tage Thompson, when they faced Utah and Clayton Keller over the last couple of years, guys who weren't picked before. But it's really a strange dynamic when you think about it, to have a guy that's an existing NHL general manager be in this role, because there are so many decisions that you could see how somebody in another market would say, wait a second. I mean, this guy now is talking to a potential free agent, and that's going to be a free agent next summer. And now this is a guy, he's got to make a call on whether or not he's going to pick him for the Olympic team. Well, do you think his chances of signing that free agent in the summer go up if he adds him to the Olympic team, and go down if he says you weren't good enough? I mean, and I know there's other guys from other teams that are a part of his staff, that this isn't a monarchy where it's one guy making the call, but it's weird. And
it is weird.
Yet at the same time, if you're USA Hockey, do you really want to limit your choice for a general manager to somebody that's not currently in the NHL, that's tuned into these players?
Yeah.
No, I mean, this is just what it is. But it is really a strange dynamic to think that, he's on the phone with players from other teams and, building relationships with them. And I could see where some other team fans in other cities, or even other front offices, would say, well, wait a second. I mean, this is almost like legal tampering. That's going on.
1,000,000%. You're 100%. And look, and it works the other way too. Like, somebody asked me recently, do you think the Wild in a year or so would have interest in John Carlson? I'm like, let me just tell you, John Carlson will not have interest in the Wild after this whole Olympic process. So it doesn't matter if the Wild have interest in that.
Yeah, it's a two-way street for sure.
But to your point, like even Jack Hughes, that video of him getting the call from Billy to be told the Olympic team, and Jack reveals on there, then Amanda Stein, the excellent reporter there with the New Jersey Devils, put this out there after the words to explain the context of what Jack was saying on there, is that after Jack cut his hand, Billy Guerin called him up to see how he was doing, to give him, uplifting, just get better. We're going to save a spot for you, all this stuff. And you're like, I know Tom Fitzgerald's also on Billy's staff and they're best buddies. He's on the USA staff, but even there, you got to almost be like, if you're Tom Fitzgerald, like, wait a minute, Billy Guerin, the GM that just traded for Quinn Hughes, is calling Jack up and giving him like positive reinforcement to get better. And like, it's just, you're 100% right. It's just weird. And then even with injuries, they've had so many injuries, and usually injuries are kept in-house for all 32 teams, but yet in his role, he's getting all this information on Jacob Slavin and Zach Wierenski and Austin Matthews and Matthew Tkachuk and Brady Tkachuk all year long. It's very strange. Let's go to some Twitter questions, Anthony. Freedom for Sight asks, how many points have we given up because we don't appear to be taking seriously in scoring seriously in shootouts? Well, that's 3. They're 3-3. And has Krill gotten a shootout goal this season? It does seem like the one thing we don't have to really genuinely go into that answer because the answer is easy. It's 3. But it does feel like I'm always fascinated about just the mood of a team when you win a shootout versus a loss. Like in the locker room last night, they're all just glum and disappointed after rallying 4 different times from a goal down because they didn't get that shootout win. Yet if they had gotten the shootout win, it would be the most positive story ever. Everybody in the locker room would be celebrating. The shootout is just bizarre. I think you and I would agree on that.
Yeah, I don't like the shootout at all. I really don't. I mean, it's a skills competition that we've talked about this before. That would be like playing a baseball game and saying if nobody scores in the 10th inning, we're going to have a home run hitting contest to see who wins the game. And I don't like it. I understand the evolution to get there and all of that, but I think Kaprizov's 1 for 4, if I remember right, in shootouts. Boldy's the only player who really has had success this year for Minnesota. I think he scored 3 times. And nobody else has more than 1 shootout goal right now. But, and thankfully the Wild haven't had too many of them. Most of their games have been decided in the OT. And that's where even 3-on-3, you could argue is a little bit of a skills contest, but at least it's still hockey. And I would love to see that overtime get extended, maybe go 10 minutes and eliminate the shootout altogether.
Yeah. The real Huber, Jeff, who's has tweeted at us for years and years and years. Anthony, he goes, the Olympics arena will be completed on time. Will they rush the completion and other aspects not to be up to standards? Coincidentally, our illustrious, notorious, renowned producer Davide lives 3 hours train ride from Milan. I was talking to him shooting the breeze as the show was beginning. And he said that right now they have an army of people, which is usually what happens in the Olympics when a building's not close to be completed. But now they have an army working on this to get it done. They have a test event scheduled 5 days from today. In fact, we have somebody from the Athletic flying over there to cover it. The hammers down on the arena is supposed to be a couple days before the women's tournament starts on February 5th. But the ice, Anthony, is the biggest concern. It's not, regardless of the size and everybody being surprised it's a little smaller than an NHL rink when it's not supposed to be. The reality is that many games are played a day on this ice surface, many practices a day on this ice surface, and it needs to be up to snuff. And right now, I think that's the biggest concern.
Well, and you would hope that they'd accept some help, because when you look at, for whatever you think about the way the NHL does things, they know what it takes to get outdoor ice or, ice ready. Even if it's outdoors in South Florida, they have ice ready. So let them help you and get it right so that it's safe and it's up to par so that you get what you're hoping to get, which is an unbelievable tournament with the best players in the world going head to head.
Yep. Wild Hockey Fan for Life, who also has tweeted us for years, nice guy on Twitter. What are your opinions about the wear and tear and compete levels for the Olympians when they return to the NHL? Not having a break could keep Gus and Wally sharp. That's certainly a way of looking at it. That's the glass half full approach. The other glass half empty is that they're going to have 11 guys there that can be tired when they get back. We saw last year, I remember, McDavid and it looked to me like he was tired coming back. Same things with guys like Larkin and Raymond. And I remember that just because the Wild played them twice coming out of the gate. Eriksson Ek basically came back with a broken freaking leg. So that's always the biggest concern when you have a lot of players there. But the good news is that Kaprizov is, I was talking to him the other day in San Jose. He's going up to the mountains of Colorado to do some high altitude training. I did tell him, I'm like, let's just don't include skiing and snowboarding in that high altitude training. Obviously Zuccarello is going to get to rest and a bunch of, unfortunately Johansson is going to get to rest, Burge, those type of guys. But it is going to be interesting. I do wonder with, the number of players going over there, if that affects teams coming out of the break, Anthony.
Well, you always wonder that, and you always hope that you don't see a major injury for sure. And that's one of the things I've always told fans when they are quick to say things like, well, it's a no-brainer to let the players go. Well, it's not. The NHL doesn't benefit financially from this, and they take on all the risk. So you just hope that everybody comes back and there isn't that major injury that can really change a team's fortunes or outlook for the second half of the season.
Couple more for you, Anthony. Jeff Wyatt says Marcus Foligno. I've seen this a lot. Looks rough out there. 2 points in 2 games. I know. By the way, he sent this before yesterday's game, so it's actually 3-3 now. And Billy Guerin says he ain't trading him, but it's hard to watch sometimes. What's the plan for him? Even last night, Anthony, he didn't look the greatest. He didn't have the check on the 4th goal. Coming down, I think on Fiala. But then on the tying goal, he made a really good play, pulling up inside the blue line, curling, waiting for Faber to come off the bench and setting up the tying goal. So, but what's your sense on him? Because, he definitely hasn't, like before he got hurt, he looked like Marcus Foligno of old. And when I talked to John Hines, I sat down with him in Vegas the other day for a Q&A that hopefully everybody read in The Athletic. In his mind, one big reason why this turnaround happened this year is because Marcus dragged this team into playing with the proper identity. And then unfortunately he sprains his knee, loses some time. It's probably affected him a bit. What do you think of him?
Yeah, I think all that's true. And I think it's a guy who's adjusting to a different role on the team where it's harder to be a leader and an impact player when you're playing fewer minutes. And I do think that he was a big part of changing and it was probably him being able to walk in and say, look, I don't care if I'm scoring or not. There's a right way to play this game, and we can all bring that. And I think, his game has been better lately. I agree with you, though. I mean, he doesn't look like the guy who was becoming one of the true elite power forwards in the NHL just a few years ago, where we were talking about a guy that was scoring 20 and racking up hits. And I do like the makeup, though, of the line with he and Trenyon on wings of Nico Sturm. I think that's a line that could be a handful for Minnesota here in the second half. And, we're probably seeing a guy that's still working his way back to being exactly what he's always been.
A couple more for you. Hockey Joe 123 says if the Ducks continue to slide as Granlund a player, Billy G goes after her. I just don't see that happening. Homer, Minneapolis, Anthony, I like this question. Panther, you mentioned you were in the stands for the national game, the national broadcast. When the Wild scored, did you have an inclination to shout out a shot he shoots, he scores from your arena seat? It's funny because I always joke, it's a really funny joke, Anthony. It hasn't gotten old in 30 years covering hockey, that when the play-by-play guy is off for a game, I always say, oh, how come you're still wearing your makeup? But I can't ever make that joke with you because you don't wear makeup on the air. But do you sit in the stands, and do you find yourself actually when you're sitting in the stands or watching a game from home kind of doing the play-by-play in your head, or are you able to actually sit there and enjoy the game?
Well, a little bit of both. I mean, it's weird to watch a game in person like that, because so many games, I mean, there's always a voice, whether it's mine where I'm doing the game or I'm watching the game on TV where there's a play-by-play voice. So I just don't sit very often and watch a game, and almost never in the crowd. I mean, when I do, occasionally it'll be in the press box at home or something. But when you sit out in the crowd, all of a sudden the sounds are just different. It's really a weird feeling because I don't have any voice in my head. I don't have the volume in the headsets. I don't have the play-by-play of another guy on TV. But every once in a while, if you're not visiting with the people next to you, I do wind up, just kind of subconsciously in your head, here comes Boldy down the wing and Eriksson Ek driving the net. And it's the way you watch games. So a little bit of that. I don't feel the need. I'm not on the verge of jumping out of my seat yelling he scores or anything, but there are times where kind of in your mind, the little call of what you'd be calling if you were calling the game does pop up.
Yeah. Final couple questions. Somebody asked also Homer, Minneapolis appeared Kaprizov scored a game wearing an Ovechkin jersey versus Washington. Is that true? I believe it is. That happens a lot. Like tomorrow on Monday, the Wild play Kopitar for the final time, and I was talking to a couple Wild players, and I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of requests from Kopitar after that game because he's such a respected player. Somebody at State of Hoppy, is there a better time to cover the Wild? It sure is fun, that's for sure, especially because the Wild aren't done. I did a story with Joe Smith the other day. It's very, very, very clear that he wants to make another big swing. Somebody asked about Mark Scheifele, would he waive to go in division? I can't see them trading in division, but I do think that they want to definitely make a huge move. Lucas Lawrence says, is Yurov still living in the hotel? No, he has found his new place. Last question, Anthony. I thought this was funny. Are the FanDuelers sick this trip?
Well, not all of us, but it has. There have been some challenges. We had some fun with Kevin. It was the San Jose game where all of a sudden his voice was gone. He sounded a little bit like Kermit the Frog, tossing it back up to us, and we had a little fun with him. He made a recovery, and then Audra Martin went down, and she tried to make a comeback. So she missed the Anaheim game. She tried to make a comeback last night, did the pregame show, and then I think it was in the first intermission, the voice was gone again. And hopefully she'll be back and ready for the Monday night game. But yeah, they've been dropping like flies on the trip so far. We'll see. Hopefully it stays away from Al Stalock and I, and we're able to finish out the trip. Just a couple games left now.
That's funny. All right. Awesome show, Anthony. Thanks for doing this. Maybe I'll see you later today in your neck of the woods in Santa Monica. You're the posh one of the two of us. Some of us are staying at lowly airport hotels.
Exactly.
January 13th is our next live show at Splitrocks. January 26th is our next live show at Elsie's. There's a chance Anthony does at least one live show in February, maybe with Gorgie or something like that, and we'll do a couple while I'm in Milan for the Olympics as well. Thanks to our incredible sponsors, Aquarius Home Services, your local authorized dealer for Connecticut water treatment systems, Onyx Maps, and Onyx Hunt. Talk to you next week, everybody. So much coming, there's nothing